Welcome and happy 33rd anniversary, Fil-Can, SDA Church members, friends, visitors, and guests. A wonderful happy Sabbath day greeting to all. The beginning with me to start a Filipino church in Toronto was pioneered by Pastor and Mrs. Juanito and Esra Alcaide, Liberato and Leonila Pedro. It all began in March 1975 when they approached the Ontario Conference about their desire to organize a Filipino church congregation to meet the spiritual needs of the increasing number of elderly, non-English speaking Filipinos, and secondly, it was preferable for Filipino brethren to open up their issues and concerns to a Filipino minister. After so many visits and plans with the Ontario Conference, a survey was conducted by Juanito Alcaide and the results were encouraging. There were 168 church members who gave their positive responses to organize the first Filipino SDA congregation in Metro Toronto. With a positive note, a church was scouted out, and a minister of the reorganized Church of Jesus of the Latter-day Saints responded favorably to inquiries about joining the church on Saturdays. The first Sabbath services held by the Filipino-Canadian SDA Church at 251 Lake Avenue was on June 15, 1980. Pastor B.G. Mary was appointed by the Ontario Conference to lead the first Filipino-Canadian church in Canada. On June 28, 1980, Elder Beck declared the church a part of the sisterhood of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Ontario Conference. So that is how we have chosen the last Sabbath of June as the Filipino-Canadian Seventh-day Adventist Church's birthday. The Filipino-Canadian Church started with 85 chartered members. The church growth actually sprouted, and soon the leaders realized that the need for their own church building was more practical because they realized that as they grew, they accumulated equipment, books, and materials that they were very difficult to inventory as they moved back and forth between the rented church's facility and their temporary storage in the church officer's home. Sometimes the church was not available and they had to find other places of venue, like using the community center for meetings. The rent was increasing and the place was getting crowded. So the Filipino church officers decided to start a church building project, and the late Danny Bologna was given the responsibility to raise the funds. Soon a lot was located at Shepherd Avenue and was purchased from a Jewish rabbi for $140,000. A plan was drawn to build a church building, and the estimated cost was $320,000. With the Ontario Conference willing to provide $200,000 from the conference revolving fund, the Filipino-Canadian church members had to raise $100,000 to match the offer tendered by the Urbex construction company to build the church. It was a seemingly insurmountable problem, but the brethren, steadfast in their faith and unflinching in their desire to build a church for the glory of God, had a day of fasting and a season of prayer. Early one Sabbath morning, Esther Rojo approached Pastor Mary and humbly offered their house and lot to cover the $100,000 needed to cover the rest of the funds to start building the church. May 21, 1984 was the day the donation was formalized between them and the conference. The group breaking ceremony took place on March 24, 1984. 1985. In late summer of September 27, 1986, the members of the Filipino-Canadian Church sat in the brand new pews of the first Filipino-Canadian Seventh-day Adventist Church in Canada and held their first Sabbath service. Carmelita Stewart was the first Sabbath school superintendent of the church. 5 years later, on October 6, 1980, the Filipino-Canadian Church paid off its mortgage and was inaugurated on June 15, 1991, to coincide with the church anniversary. In the early years of immigration to Canada, the first Filipino Seventh-day Adventist members of our church worshiped at the Willowdale SDA Church located at 535 Finch Avenue West. I myself became a member of this multiculturally diverse church built close to the Branson Hospital, now North York Branson Center. As the number of Filipino SDA immigrants increased, the brethren thought it wise that a church catering to the non-English speaking immigrants would be established, and so the first multicultural Filipino church was organized through the Toronto North SDA Church. However, the project to build a church ended up in a church planting group creating the Emmanuel Church and another church group forming the original Filipino-Canadian Seventh-day Adventist Church at Blake Avenue. Looking back, the Filipino-Canadian Seventh-day Adventist Church was started at this street, at this same spot where I'm right now, where once stood a church called the Church of Latter-day Saints, which was then rented by the first Filipino-Canadian immigrants to Toronto. As families and loved ones immigrated to Toronto due to sponsorships and work visa acceptances, the church rapidly multiplied its membership, and soon the task of building a church of its own was envisioned. There are 9 other churches within the GTA. We have the first church that branched out, the Bramley Church, Blessed Hope, Fair Heavens, Faith Filipino, Hamilton Filipino Church, Mississauga Church, Mount Zion, Scarborough Filipino, and Toronto Filipino Seventh-day Adventist Church. Through the years, the following ministers have served and led the church as it expanded and grew. Since the Fil-Can Church got inaugurated, 11 pastors have served the congregation. These were the pastors who served: Pastor Benito Mari, Pastor Efinito Adap, Pastor Abel Pangan, Pastor Romy Dakila, Pastor Adam Buyak, Pastor Zineo Manalo, Pastor Wel Puedipan, Pastor Daniel Katangay, Pastor Edwin Martin, Pastor Joseph Batiansila, Pastor Charles Zohano, Pastor Alan Dicena, and these are our 2 current pastors serving the Fil-Can SDA Church. This 33rd anniversary celebration of the Filipino-Canadian Seventh-day Adventist Church, we praise the Lord for His abundant care and love for each one of us in this growing church. We give tribute and respect to the commitment and dedication of the pioneers who before us have sacrificed their time, effort, and money to building this church for the glory of God and to witness to the community around us. We would like to thank Dr. Vic Luis Ariola III, our guest speaker who comes from the North American Division and is currently the Asian Ministries Director. Welcome to the beautiful city of Toronto and hope you enjoy your stay here with us. I'm Cleveline de Coloma Coreses, a member of this church. Happy Sabbath, everyone.